BlogTalkRadio.
Welcome to the Cold Hard Truth of Sports.
I apologize in advance if I am out of line here.
Brace yourselves, boys. We're going.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you're doing?
I'm not reading, I'm just looking at the picture. Welcome to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports.
Welcome, everyone, to another great week here of the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. I'm your host, Matthew Long. Awesome day today. We had the XFL's reboot. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Can you guys check on the Facebook Live thing? It's 2 weeks in a row that it has decided to just peace out. Okay, anyways. The XFL started the next stage of their reboot today with their draft. And one name, they actually, the quarterbacks, the first quarterback for each team was essentially delegated to the team. And one guy who is an NFL backup, Cordell Jones, elected to get rid of his contract with the NFL and go play in the XFL. So, I guess kudos to him. Those that normally watch on Facebook Live, I'm told that they're getting that set back up. We're getting that set back up now. So, there were some upsets this week in college football as well, which stirred up the top 10. For me, it didn't change a whole lot. My top 10 last week already had LSU at number 2, and they're still at number 2 on mine. Our consensus top 10, the college, the CHT on CFB top 10 for week 8. We'll share that here with you shortly. It changed a little bit. It changed a little bit as well. The Associated Press and Coaches Poll both have Alabama still at number 1. We'll get a little bit more into some of these polls as well. You know, I wonder if the Associated Press would have the same poll today. This would be their consensus poll today, had they waited till after week 6 like we did. I'm willing to bet no. I literally had a little conversation with a guy who covers Hawaii, and he had the Florida Gators last week ranked number 2. He's an AP voter, and he voted for the Gators to be ranked number 2. His argument was basically, why not? That was his argument. Why not? So, well, we saw LSU and Florida play this weekend. and we see why not. All right, we're about there on. We're about there on Facebook Live, so we should be back now. So welcome everybody on Facebook Live again. Hopefully it doesn't cut out this time, like it did the last couple weeks. But oh well, we're back on. There's been some big trades, big moves in the NFL as well, and we'll get into those moves tonight too. Kevin Crest has the night off, and I'm joined now by my co-host this evening. He's also the host of the Boxing Source podcast and radio show right here on this network. He's also the editor for our boxing section and one of our top contributors for football as well, Mr. James Bell. How are you doing tonight, James?
Doing good, man.
I don't know why, but the Facebook connection went out again. So I tried twice.
And Facebook's been tripping over the past week or so. I've had a little bit of a issue with Facebook over the weekend, so they're not really on my good side, and it seems like a few people out there in social media world want to go on strike with Facebook for some reason. So they're not looking pretty good right now.
So we're obviously not doing that today then. So, all right. Well, we'll have to wait till they figure their crap out, and we'll get back into that next week. Then, but we're still on Spreaker, as we are every week, and BlogTalkRadio. So those they work. For now, I guess. Yeah. So we have so today was the first of the 2 days of the XFL draft. So I wanted to start off the show with the XFL. Did you happen to watch any of it?
No, I didn't catch the parts of this XFL draft, or at least the first day of it. This is show like a little bit of a wrinkle of how they pick players in comparison to the National Football League. They did it in a different format.
I'm sorry, you cut out there a little bit. What'd you say?
I was saying that they kind of like did their draft in a different format in comparison to how like the NFL does it.
That's just because it was the initial. It's just because it was the initial draft. So this is the and it was different because every team started with a quarterback, which was different. And then they went from there to draft offensive skill players. Then they did offensive line, and then defensive front seven. And that's where they left off at. The last I saw. And they did 10 rounds. Believe it or not. 10 rounds. And let me take a look here. And then tomorrow we'll get the defensive skill players. And then the other positions that they're going to fill in. Basically, it's up for grabs after that. And by the way, quarterback was included in offensive skill player. So out of the picks that they had in, and there was, let me see here, 10 rounds each. And that's the thing, and they broke it down by kind of like by the position, which made things a bit more interesting. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. And like I said, it was offensive skill players, offensive linemen, and then defensive front 7. So they did 10 rounds of each. So essentially, after the quarterback, the first overall draft pick was made by the DC Defenders. It was Rashad Davis, wide receiver. So, and then with the second overall pick was Connor Cook, quarterback, and that was the Houston Roughnecks. New York Guardians selected for a third overall pick D'Angelo Yancey, who's a wide receiver. He's from Purdue. He was one of the guys that I was really high on a couple years ago, going into the NFL draft. Trying to remember who he got picked up by. I'll take a look at it. But he was one of the guys I was really, really high on. Then was the Dallas Rough Riders, Jeff Baggett. He's a wide receiver. He's from Oklahoma. Tight end Nick Truesdell. And that was with Tampa. It's interesting. They went with a tight end first overall. Then running back for the St. Louis Battle, their first overall pick was Christian Michael, who's a running back out of Texas A&M. And then the Seattle Dragons, which was the last pick of the first round. Oh, no. Second to last pick of the first round, they took running back Trey Williams. Pretty sure he's a Texas A&M running back too. And then Elijah Hood, running back for the Los Angeles Wildcats. So, ACC there. So it was pretty overwhelmingly like wide receiver in that first round. And then basically the last 3 picks of the first round were running backs. It's always interesting to see which way they end up going with these. But we'll delve. I'll have the full breakdown of the entire first rounds of the draft. And the entire draft for the XFL, we'll have that up on the website this week. So people can have an idea of where that's at. And the thing is, I mean, there's a lot of guys on here. There are guys on here that are well-known names. Like Donnell Pumphrey from San Diego State. He was the leading rusher in college football. He was a 7th-round pick by the Defenders for the skill guys. So Sammy Coates, another wide receiver. He was well heralded. Auburn, right? Sammy Coates, Auburn. He was a third round pick for the Houston Roughnecks. Alonzo Moore. He was a fifth round pick for, I think, fifth or sixth round pick for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a 10th round pick for Tampa Bay Vipers. So there's a good amount of guys on this list that are names that should be readily familiar. Tampa people, I mean, they drafted Quentin Flowers. Tampa remembers him as a quarterback. But just like I came on after the Shrine game, and I talked about it on this show. I believe I talked about it on Take That L. I know in our groups that, we chat in, I said that he's going to have to change his position, either receiver or running back. And he did. He changed his position to running back. He got drafted. He was a fifth-round pick by the Tampa Bay Vipers at running back. So, there are, there's some pretty decent. Matt Jones, running back. He was from Florida. He was a seventh-round pick by St. Louis, by the Battlehawks. So, people should be ready to pay attention to this. There's a few guys in here that could be in the league as a backup or on practice squads, but have made the decision to play in the XFL. There's guys in here that were playing just a few months ago in the Alliance for American Football League. There's some guys in here, a couple guys in here that were in the UFL. So, I mean, there's opportunity here. What fans decide to do with this is totally up to them. I'm surprised Ryan Broyles didn't see Ryan Broyles go. Tim Lucas, he's another wide receiver. There's a couple of wide receivers I was surprised I didn't see here in the first 10 rounds. But likely both will go within go tomorrow. There's, again, defensive. They haven't done skill players. So, I mean, there's some decent safeties and corners in here. Guys I know have been in the league for a little while. So, I look forward to it. It's something new. The thing is, Vince said he was putting $500 million behind this. He needed $100 million to operate for the first year, but he's putting $500 million behind it to make sure it gets off the ground the right way. And they're already working on a bunch of different things for this. And again, the XFL, I mean, we in ways, a lot of people look back and joke about it and laugh at it. But we have the innovative camera angles and are able to broadcast the way that we are today in college football and in NFL, in part because of the innovations the XFL made. I mean, just something as simple as being able to put a nickname on the back of your jersey. I mean, we see that all over baseball. Soccer does it. The NFL hasn't adopted that yet. But, there's a lot of different layers and different things that the XFL did the first time around to really innovate this. The XFL is working on making sure that the quarterbacks have helmet cams. So that's one view. They're going back to seeing how they can put referees or cameras on our referees too, which we've seen in Big Three. Since then, in the Big Three, we've seen some in various conferences in college football kind of try it out. So they're doable. It's feasible. But what are they going to do to set themselves apart? I mean, we saw certain broadcasts with baseball. Fox was putting up. They did something as simple as showing the strike zone and using technology to map where the ball, where the pitch was, in or outside the box. Something as simple as that, create a level of interest in a different level of interest in baseball. It kind of took that area of question and made it more tangible for people. So I'm interested to see what they do. I hope there's a viable second league for professional football. Obviously, amateur football is very viable. It's healthy. It's doing great. But, NFL Europe was very important, I think, for football. And I think with having the XFL, if we would have been able to have the AAFL or the UFL, another league. And that's the thing is the AAFL and the UFL really tried to cater and work with the NFL to develop talent, to get them their way, especially the UFL. The XFL, no, not so much. They want to compete with the NFL. And Vince McMahon's one of those guys he's ready and willing to step up and start hacking away. So I'm going to get the quarterbacks that were assigned or signed with teams were as follows. Let me grab that here real quick. Okay, so the initial quarterback assignments, essentially, like I said, they're assigned to a team. The Houston Roughnecks have Philip Walker from Temple. Matt McClone for the New York Guardians. Luis Lopez for the Los Angeles Wildcats. Jordan Ta'amua, St. Louis Battlehawks. I talked to him during the Shrine game. He's an interesting kid. He's another one of those guys that were a baseball player. He played at Ole Miss, but I'm interested to see what he does. I thought he had a bit of upside in the NFL as a backup. I know that they liked him on scout teams because of his athleticism. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Jordan can do in the XFL. Aaron Murray with the Tampa Bay Vipers. So a Tampa kid going back to Tampa. Cordell Jones, like I said, he decided that he wanted to give up his backup role in the NFL and he was assigned to the DC Defenders. Landry Jones, who has been kind of a journeyman backup, was assigned with the Dallas Renegades, and then Brandon Silvers with the Seattle Dragons. So, some household names, some names that some people have to dig in to figure out where they know them from. So it'll all work itself out in the end. It'll either be viable or not. So I'm hopeful for it, though. I mean, what do you make of it? Do you think this is this something that's much needed, in your opinion?
What, as far as this league and with them trying to compete with the National Football League?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it could start as such, but they might need to, have. I think the thing was, the last time that they did it was that they, had a lot of the fanfare and everything, but the product wasn't good. So what they would need to have here is they would need to have a good competitive product from the athletes. And I think that's what separates, the National Football League from a lot of the other organizations that have, been out there, with the exception of, maybe the Arena Football League. As far as staying consistent or having longevity is because, level of competition has to be, either somewhat equal, but at least be competitive to make it a quality product. So that's the thing that would be the XFL's major concern here, and their second try at running a league is that they just have to be able to have a respectable product out there for fans of the sport of football to be interested on a more consistent basis.
Well, I want to kind of pull back the curtain here a little bit, because I was actually able to obtain a release from the XFL that was sent out to agents of prospective XFL players. Now, what this email that was sent out, it was for the 2019-2020 XFL player compensation and payroll schedule. All right. It says players who are drafted and retained by the XFL team will become full-time employees of the XFL on December 4th, 2019. After they report to minicamp and upon execution of an XFL standard player contract. As a full-time employee, XFL players will be paid bi-weekly basis, and then it gives an approximate of $2,068. So that's every other week. A little over $4,000 a month from December 4th through May 30th, 2020. If they remain on an NFL team for the complete 2020 season, the player's first check will be issued on Friday, December 20th, 2019. So if they're going to remain with them for the full season. It's interesting because the total salary, essentially what they're looking at, is approximately $55,000 for players who are retained on an active list throughout the season. So, again, that number is much different than what we see in the NFL. However, the players will be eligible to participate in the XFL's health insurance program, which includes medical, dental, vision plans at no charge for for a player's individual coverage. Players who are interested also may participate in the XFL's 401k plan. So that also, even though the pay is a bit different, again, they're giving examples here. The players clearly are signing contracts that will rival those of some NFL contracts. But they're saying at the minimum here, they're looking at $55,000. There's game activity fees and victory bonuses are roughly $1,700 to $2,200 respectively. Accordingly, a player may earn up to almost $5,000 per game. Again, this is on their entry basis. Obviously, contracts can vary from player to player. So, just kind of looking at how they're structuring some of this is in a sense designed in a way to set the player up for now and the future. Hopefully, they're around long enough. So the fact that they can participate in a 401k, I don't know how long they keep that around. Obviously, the XFL was around and then now is rebooted. I don't know if they kept the 401k from the last time around or necessarily how that works, but nonetheless, that is a wrinkle. The health insurance plans at no cost. They don't have to worry about paying for health insurance out of the $55,000. So that's it's another $300, $500 a month. They don't have to worry about. So some interesting things that the NFL or the XFL is doing a little bit different, and obviously they're trying to entice players away from the NFL. It's going to be tough to entice away top guys from the NFL just simply because of the money, If you're being paid millions, why would you give that up for less? I mean, why? I don't think anybody would. But as the league grows and builds, initially we're looking at 8 teams here. The more that it grows, obviously the more viability and the more opportunity and changes that will be made with growth. So I know I'm interested in watching it. I wanna see what they can do to keep it around for longer. And they're one of the few programs that are actually, besides college football, that are on, ABC, Fox, ESPN, and CBS. So they're not dedicated to any just one network, which was one of the things that with the UFL, you were pretty much stuck on CBS for 3 seasons that they were around. It was pretty much just on CBS for the majority of that time. The Alliance of American Football, I've only ever caught games on replay. I couldn't tell you what channel they were on. Shamingly so. Did you watch any of those games live that you recall?
For the Alliance of American Football, unless if they were, on I think it was, TNT? I think they had it on TNT.
Weren't they on Facebook too?
Either TNT or on TBS.
One of the two. Didn't they have some games on Facebook?
They might have, but I've never seen a game on. I never heard of the game, being on Facebook Live or shown on Facebook or whatever it is. So that wasn't one thing that I kind of like looked out for, because it didn't look like it was advertised on it or what, so I kind of said, nah, I ain't, going on Facebook to watch an XFL game, unless it was, like I said, unless if it was on, one of the cable networks, then I wasn't going to really go for watching it.
Yeah, that's the thing is I'm surprised, because that's the thing. So the draft, they broadcasted on Zoom, using Zoom on YouTube Live. It was on YouTube Live, so it wasn't the most spectacular event. So they'll probably look back at it at one point in time and be like, yeah, here was the first one, and where they evolve from there. But, right now, there's not the fanfare around the draft. People want to see games. They want to see football. So
yep. The thing is, you got to be able to, have those type of outlets, for the people to be able to easily access them. And if you can't do that, then you're pretty much not going to have your product be lasting very long. But the thing with the Alliance of American Football was they didn't come in with any type of, investment funding to hold up the water for, about 6 weeks or so. So that was, destined to fail, because they just didn't plan it out right at all.
I still haven't got the information from them for the official schedule yet. But it's funny because if you go to the team, on any of the team pages, they got pricing for season tickets, and, for when. I don't even have dates yet. More on that when it comes around. So I look forward tomorrow watching. I will tune in and keep up with it tomorrow for the XFL draft. All right, so I want to get back into college football after this past weekend. Funny thing is, LSU went up in the Associated Press and in the coaches poll, up 3 spots in each. LSU rose to number 2 in the Associated Press, which they were already number 2 in our poll last week, and number 3 in the coaches poll. Alabama's number 1 in both, and then in Associated Press, you got Alabama, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Penn State, Notre Dame, Florida, and Georgia to round out the top 10. Coaches poll, very similar. Alabama, Clemson, LSU. Looks like, all they did was essentially flip-flop Clemson and LSU. That's the only difference in those two polls. In the top 10, in the top 12. That's the only change in the top 12 at all. 13 and 14, they got Utah and Boise State switched. They pretty much had a consensus on Texas at 15, Michigan at 16, Arizona State at 17, Baylor at 18, SMU at 19, Minnesota 20, Cincy 21, Missouri 22. AP has Iowa 23, and Washington is number 23 in the coaches poll. App State is 24 on both. And then Washington is, the Huskies are number 25 in the Associated Press. And they opted for the coaches poll to have Temple instead of Missouri. So that's a big difference between those two. So I'd like to get into the better poll. So this week, for week 8, the Cold Hard Truth on College Football top 10 poll in reverse order is at number 10, the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 9, Oregon. Number 10, moving up one spot from last week, or 2 spots from last week, Notre Dame. Penn State is at 7. Number 6 is Wisconsin. And our top 5 are Clemson at 5, Alabama at 4, Oklahoma 3, Ohio State falling to number 2, and the new number 1 this week in our top 10 poll is LSU. Now, we saw for 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters, Florida seemed to play some decent football and hung around there with LSU. But when it came time to separate and really take charge of the game in the second half, LSU made some adjustments and they just outplayed Florida. What were your big takeaways from LSU's win over Florida this weekend, James?
Well, I would say for one that LSU just proved to be an overall better team in that game. That they couldn't really lose much of their momentum on offense. And I kind of seen like Joe Burrow really kind of like have a very efficient, very effective game there where you didn't necessarily have that many big plays from Joe Burrow until, maybe like the end of the game. But, stuff where he didn't, make a huge mistake to try to give Florida much of a, chance to kind of really take advantage. People were talking about Florida's defense, but, they couldn't force any turnovers on LSU. And LSU was able to, at least score a touchdown in every quarter of the game. So, while they, had their thing where they kind of like hung on offense for the first half, they couldn't keep up with them in the second half. While LSU like acted like they didn't necessarily skip a beat on offense. So kind of like give props to them in reference to that. You also had a very good game by Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the ground, getting 134 rushing yards. So it just kind of like shows that they were the overall better team. And it was like I was saying, I just wasn't sold on Florida over the season because they hadn't really played much of a schedule up until these past couple of weeks. And the thing with Auburn was they did have that game against Oregon, but they did they kind of escaped that game against Oregon. And so, with that and with them being an SEC team, they kind of like got a lot put behind them for that. So in the game that they, Auburn had against Florida, Florida had a lot of turnovers in that game. It was just that Auburn didn't take advantage of those turnovers. So, while Florida was able to, win that game, they had a lot of mistakes over the course of that game. And with Auburn not being able to take advantage, that's how Florida was able to hold on and get that win. So I just felt that Florida just, going up against a team in LSU that has been very impressive over the course of the season, I just didn't think that the Gators would be able to, hang with them for 4 quarters.
Yeah, and, I'll give the Florida offense this. They were able to muster up getting some points against a really good LSU defense. And I do think Florida went out and played the best game that they could possibly play. That was exactly the best that they could lay out there. Wasn't enough to win, but this is you notice this with teams, and I put, and I like to relate it to boxing because the first half is kind of like that first 5 or 6 rounds. The guys that are prize fighters for that first 5 or 6 rounds, they're doing enough to maybe just win the round, or maybe they lose a round here or there. But then in the 6th, at the end of the 5th, the 6th round, they turn on a different switch. They make adjustments, and it's a completely different fight usually at that point. And that's pretty much where they're closing the door behind them on the fight. And championship quality teams do that. It may be close at half, but by mid-third quarter, who has the momentum? That championship quality team will take the momentum by mid-second quarter, and you start to see the separation being made. And conversely, teams that aren't championship quality teams start making more mistakes, not taking advantage of the field position they get. You see mishaps in coaching, and really where a lot of coaches get exposed in the coach games midway through the third quarter. Because now you've had the half, you came out, you've had a possession, and by your second or third possession of the second half, what are you doing? What are you showing? If you're doing the same thing you were doing in the first half, then you're probably, it's going to get, an elite level team will change it up. That's the thing. And you can pick and choose, especially if you watch closely. For those fans that really are into the sport, you'll start to notice there's a lot of coaches towards the end of the first half they may roll out certain sets, certain plays, not to see if it's not necessarily with the objective to score on the play or get a first down or really get much out of it, but other than using that set and that play to see how the defense reacts. Because they want to look into the defense to see how did they prepare for us? What are they expecting us to do when we do this? How do they react? So then what you'll see is a similar set midway through the third quarter to give the defense a look at, we just saw this just before the half. They might do the same thing. Maybe if it's a run play, they play hard on play action and then they get it over the top. You know? It's kind of the same way defenses will show blitz and then back into coverage. Offenses will do that. They'll line up a certain way. They'll run the play. And then they'll show the same setup a quarter or two later and run something different. Or they'll run the same exact thing. Because as they feel like there was just maybe a missed assignment or something in the first half on that play, and they can expose the defense, they'll try to do that. So it's not every play that's rolled out there is designed to necessarily take it to the house, but they use plays to set up future plays. How are they going to continue to attack the defense? Where are the weaknesses? What tendencies do the defense have? So, it's a game of chess, and that's what LSU did. They were able to. Because Joe Burrow is a very accurate thrower. He's good at anticipating throws. I have him right now as my number one pro prospect at quarterback right now. Just simply seeing how he plays. And again, it's nothing to say anything bad about Tua Tagovailoa or Trevor Lawrence. But Joe Burrow definitely looks the part of the NFL. I mean, size, everything, and with his play, he's not taking stupid risks. He's making good decisions, and the good decision making and sound mechanics is what translates to the NFL more than anything. That's one thing the things that really translate. So, I mean, he's at 2,100 yards on the season, 25 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So, he's up there among the top passers in the country. So, they've taken kind of a hybrid concept to this. It's not a pro style offense. It's not West Coast, even though there are some timing routes. There's some anticipation that is involved. But it's also not pure spread either. I think there are times where they could benefit more from going under center. But that's just college football in general. I'd like to see that a little bit more with college football teams, seeing a few plays, working a few wrinkles here and there under center. But tell that to Chip Kelly and Mike Leach and they'll look at you crooked. But I had them number 2. They were number 2 in our poll. I had them still number 2. I have Ohio State number 1 in my poll. Just because Ohio State looks like the most complete team right now. They look like the most, again, this always, as always, is subject to change. So, we may see Ohio State stumble, which we haven't seen yet. Also, not far behind there, Wisconsin went up in my poll as well. Funny enough, Wisconsin fell in Kevin's poll. Wisconsin was ahead of Clemson, and they've fallen behind Clemson. So it's amazing.
Yes, he was impressed by Clemson's performance against Florida State or something. I mean, I don't know, man. That game, I think that was, where you thought Florida State would start Hornibrook for that game, but apparently not. They still went with James Blackman, and they paid for it considerably.
You see what I'm saying? Hornibrook keeps him in games because he can manage the game well. He's an accurate passer. He's not an uber athlete, but he allows Akers to do his job. You think, okay, so the one thing I can tell you when I talk to offensive linemen that they hate is a guy that's all over the place all the time. Because that's where their whole job is to be in front of that defender and protect the quarterback that's usually behind them. And if you got somebody behind you running all over the damn place, not sticking in the pocket, improvising too quick, breaking the pocket too quick, and it goes out on the run, and it's tough to keep guys off of him. And then when you do hold your block up, they end up getting sacked because they hold the ball too long. If you're running outside the tackle box, there's no reason you should be giving up a sack. Just chuck it out of bounds. It's that simple. You should be trying to take hits near the sidelines, And this is just something guys don't get. Yes, it's good to have mobile quarterbacks. You want to see guys be able to improvise, to be able to stretch time, to get guys open. But Blackman doesn't keep his eyes down the field. I don't know if he ever gets past the second level. He doesn't, unless the play is designed to go deep. I don't see him really targeting past 10 yards.
Giving a second or third look. He doesn't go to a second or third option very much.
No, because his second or third option, he's already running around all over the place. So his second or third option, where if he could have moved within the pocket, he could have stepped up in the pocket or moved outside the pocket. See, this is why offensive coordinators, a lot of guys that, if they know the guy struggles passing from the pocket, there's a lot of design bootleg plays. They a lot of design bootleg. So this way the blocking scheme is set up for him to move to the right or move to the left. It's set up that way. When a guy's just running all over the place like it's the backyard, Is it exciting to watch? Sometimes. But I'm telling you, if I was an FSU fan, I would be irritated as shit seeing Blackman in the game. If I was an FSU fan, the headline that would make me excited was Blackman enters transfer portal. That would be exciting if I was an FSU fan.
Too late for that now.
Those would be exciting words. But literally, if you just look at the games FSU has been competitive in and won, their starting quarterback is Alex Hornibrook. I'm sorry if, they want a certain guy in there, but, it's clearly a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole, whichever way. It don't fit. And then by the time they bring Hornibrook in the second half, they score 14 points. He threw one interception and one touchdown. But again, you put a guy in a situation, he's going to try to park because he wants to win the game. By the time he came in, let me just go back here real quick. By the time he came in, it was like it was 28-0 at half, right? So by the time he comes in, he feels like, guys that are confident, they're saying, 31, 32 points. If my defense can hang in there and step up big, I can get those points. That's what goes through their head. Is it logical? Absolutely not. But that's what goes through their head. I'm going to go out here and do this. I need to carry this team. And Cam Akers is more effective when Hornibrook is in. I mean, if you just look at the difference, just go to the play-by-play. If you want to see it, start out with, if you did just scoring drives, it would only be Clemson the first half. But Hornibrook threw a touchdown, 2 minutes in the third quarter, 2-2. 3-play drive, 64 yards, touchdown to Terry. They come right back. Next possession, they get a handoff to Laybourne, 40-yard run. Aguayo's kick is good. Willie, you may love Blackman like he's your son, but there's just some times he's not the best person for the team. He comes in when it's too late. Some people argue it's garbage time. He did that because it was garbage time. I think if he starts the game, it's a different game. They start off. Clemson started with the ball. Florida State goes 6 plays, punt. 3 and out. The defense held. So Clemson opened up with a touchdown. Florida State couldn't do anything. 6 plays, took in 2 minutes. They gave the ball right back. Clemson, 4 plays, punt. Again, Florida State gets the ball back, down 7-0, 3 and out. Clemson gets the ball back. They went on a 9-play drive, soaked up almost 4 minutes, and scored a touchdown. Then, Blackman does what he does. He exits the game. This is what, second quarter by now. And so we're down 14-0. Hornibrook comes in, and the pass he threw on 2nd and 11 wasn't a good pass. But he's trying to force it. Ends up being an interception. That was the interception of the game. Clemson capitalized off of it. 11 plays. Soaks up another 5 minutes. Gets a touchdown. 3 and out. So, you see, that's just it. I can't understand why they insist on this. I mean, Blackman was in for 9 plays. Is that what it was? 9 plays? He threw 21 passes. Completed 9. Had 9 completions. 23 passes. 66 yards. Threw 2 interceptions. So, it's just, I mean, and his mobility wasn't even a threat. 3 rushes for -3 yards. So, he wasn't even a threat on the ground. You start in a hole. It makes, against championship quality teams, elite level programs, you don't often dig yourself out of the hole.
Yeah, it's not a good look when you have that type of a start. When you know that your quarterback play hasn't been good, pretty much for most of the game. Well, I mean, most of the season, I would say. So you kind of like force the offense to become predictable after having that type of a lead. And Brett Venables was kind of like licking his chops once the offense had that fast start. So they kind of like knew what was going to happen. After that, once they got into that big lead. So that's what kind of like made them jump off to being 21-0, 28-0. Having like
and I don't understand why he kept going back and forth between Hornibrook and Blackman. Blackman didn't work. And Hornibrook threw an interception. But again, the thing is at the point that he threw the interception, again, that was Florida State's third possession. He threw an interception. They were down 14-0. It ended up being 21-0, right? So instead of letting him go back out there and writing it, have him write it out, he takes Blackman out, puts Blackman back in, who clearly didn't work. That's the whole reason you put Hornibrook back in. He was like, yeah, he really isn't working. Blackman threw a pass, incomplete. Or he threw a pass completed for 7 yards. A rush for 2, a rush for no gain. They punted. Clemson got the ball back. I think if you don't give up on Hornibrook there, Because the last 3 games, you've done well with Hornibrook in. Why would you give up to him? I mean, you literally throw him in there cold on your 3rd possession of the game, and you expect something spectacular, I guess. I don't know. He threw an interception. Oops. I mean, if we take a look, let me take a look at his stats for the year. Hornibrook isn't a guy that throws a lot of interceptions. Usually makes pretty safe decisions. Pretty safe passes. Oh, yeah. That was his only interception of the season. He has 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. So, he completes 72% of his passes. It doesn't make any sense. The week before, you beat North Carolina State 31-13 with Hornibrook. Why do you bring Blackman back in? I mean, Hornibrook was he was 28 for 40 for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. You know, against a conference foe and a team that is also above 500. But, you know, doesn't matter. Let's go with Blackman, James Blackman, because he's been so superior this season, and 4 interceptions, his 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in his game, but he doesn't have any wins this season of any note. So, I had confidence in FSU. And, yeah, that just reminded me why that was a bad idea. Oh, well. Oh, well. So Clemson moves up in some people's mind. James, you had them number 1 last week, right? I didn't get your...
Yeah, I did.
Your top 10, top 15. Where did you have them in yours?
Yeah, I had them at number 1.
Still number 1?
Yep, still number 1. You know, so I had Clemson at number 1. I just moved LSU to number 2 after this week. And, you know, I think, like, most things kind of, like, moved down a little bit after that. You know, Alabama number 3, Oklahoma number 4, you know, them getting that, you know, win against Texas. You know, they tried to, you know, have about, like, a two-score lead on them, on Texas, but, you know, Texas always, you know, kind of like found a way to, like, get it back within to, like, single digits. So they missed the spread on that one. Then I had Wisconsin at number 5. You know, I think they had their game against Michigan State. Still, you know, still have one of those most stifling defenses in the country. And,
yeah.
you know, I kind of like think that they're a team that, you know, that the country has to watch out for. They, you know, only have that one game coming up against Ohio State where, you know, they kind of like have to show themselves because they, you know, they have a game at Illinois coming up Saturday, and then they look ahead to playing Ohio State, and that's a game that's at Ohio State, 12 o'clock game. So that'll be something for them to kind of like get themselves up for. Because
I'm willing to bet that's college game day.
Right. Yeah. There's going to be college game day there. 2 teams in the top 6. So, they're going to, be very amped up to see where they're going to be as far as, like, in the Big Ten and overall. Because, right now, they're 2 games up. They're tied with Minnesota, but 2 games up in the next team that's in second place in the Big Ten West. So, so that game against Ohio State is, very, very important for them to, not only stay up there as far as like a Big Ten championship contender, but also be a candidate for the college football playoff this year. So that's a game that I'm definitely looking forward to see if Wisconsin can kind of like prove themselves against a team like an Ohio State who, kind of like has the type of players that would, defeat a Wisconsin team usually. So that's what I'm kind of like looking forward to in that one. Let's see who I have after that. Wisconsin and Ohio State. And then after that, Penn State. So had like 3 Big Ten teams in a row. Penn State had their game against Iowa, where they were able to, have a, little bit of a tough game against Iowa. And they were able to, get the win. They have their next game, primetime game against Michigan. So that's going to be something there that we're going to see if they'll be able to, get back into their offensive ways. As Iowa's always a tough matchup, no matter if it's at home or on the road. Iowa's a tough matchup. I mean, we saw them, lose to Michigan, but Michigan only had 10 points. So this is, not much different here against Penn State, where they allowed 17 points. They still lost, but they allowed 17 points. So, Penn State will probably have a little bit more points on the board against Michigan. So just looking ahead to that primetime game on, ABC there, I think. So, and then to, round out the top 10 that I had, Notre Dame having their win against USC, Oregon. They had a Friday game where they, just blasted Colorado 45-3. I mean, it was, not even close from the first half. And then to round out the top 10 was Auburn. Auburn had a free week, so they had an off week this week. So they didn't really have to, they didn't play anyone. They are preparing their road game against Arkansas. So that's, what I have for top 10.
So Georgia fell out of your top 10 altogether?
Yes, they did. They did for their loss to South Carolina. So many turnovers there by Jake Fromm. Multiple mistakes there out there on the field. Missing, Blankenship missing that field goal kind of like wrapped it up and sealed the deal for him. So that kind of was a bad loss, very bad loss at home against South Carolina. So, I mean, and for some reason it just looked like, Georgia hadn't been, all that impressive as far as like their overall performance over the course of the season. Yes, they did beat Notre Dame, but, that game against Notre Dame, it was like, I kind of like expected them to really show themselves to have the, better athletes, more of a speed in the skill positions, and they just couldn't get themselves over the hump against Notre Dame until late in the game.
I dropped Georgia to 8, just behind Penn State, ahead of Notre Dame, and Oregon was my number 10. Auburn was 13. So I had Ohio State, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Wisconsin, Clemson, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, Utah, Florida, Auburn, Michigan, Boise State, Minnesota, Cincy, SMU, Baylor, Arizona State, Missouri, Texas, Iowa, Washington, Appalachian State to round up my top 25. So
you were able to put in a whole 25 there.
I did a 25. I did last week too.
What do you think about a few of those teams there that are undefeated? That are kind of like on the bottom part
that's where I started at 15. So Boise State's at 15. Minnesota's at 16. Cincy, when I see Cincinnati, their only loss is to Ohio State. They got outcoached and out-athleted in that game. They just didn't have certain components to win that game. Ohio State was just clearly a better team on a different level. So I don't take that one loss as heavily, but they beat UCF, and they were able to find ways to put points up on the board against Ohio State, not in garbage time. So they were competitive at times against Ohio State, although overall Ohio State was clearly the better team, and that's one reason why I have Ohio State as the number 1 on my poll. But Minnesota, again, 6-0, Big Ten, they obliterated Nebraska. They pushed them around the field. They wanted the game more, and that's kind of how each of their games have been. They've been in danger in a couple of and not playing well, but they have just showed that they wanted to win more. And they have a good stable of running backs. They have some okay skill guys. The quarterback is very decent. Their defense is deceptively good, and that's why I have them from not being ranked. I had them probably around 26 or 27 to 14, because from what I saw is I feel that they're better than Cincinnati in that regard. That they've been able to stay undefeated. I don't know who wins that game, but I have, again, the edge on them at 16, Cincinnati at 17. SMU, again, they've been very dominant in play, but I don't think they beat Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati beats SMU. Close game. Baylor has looked good, but Baylor looks good when Baylor looks good, and then they don't, So I have them at 19 because Baylor has always been suspect to me. Same way with TCU. They've always been kind of suspect to me. They look flashy, and but at the end, is the substance really there? I don't know if they have what it takes to really play against a top-tier team. I think SMU, in some respects, does because of how they're set up and how they play, matchup-wise. So that's why SMU has an edge over Baylor. Arizona State has shown that they can beat Power 5 schools week in and week out and be competitive in others. They have a dumb loss, but again, I can't say because of that dumb loss that they necessarily beat Baylor. They should, but they may not. Missouri is one of the teams that I had preseason as my dark horse in the SEC East. So when I saw, again, they lost their first game, that was terrible. To nobody, McBurger, East-West school. But since then, what I expected to see I've seen. And they look dangerous. So with their one loss, they look dangerous. I have them there at 21. Again, because of the terrible loss at the beginning of the season. If that terrible loss isn't there, and they're 6-0 right now, they would probably be 8 instead of 21. I think that they have the ability to be up there in the top 15, but I want to see more football. Again, because the first 6 weeks, not a lot's been, you haven't seen much. There's not a lot to draw from overall, just looking at the level of competition. Because usually you haven't had, other than one game, stellar competition. Now they're getting into conference play, and they look good. So Texas, again, 2 losses. And they didn't look impressive in the loss to Oklahoma. Oklahoma dominated the game. The score was fairly close at times. Oklahoma clearly showed that they're on another level. Their defense is playing so much better this year. And Texas just shows that, they're a tier below that, and they have 2 losses. So Missouri-Texas might be a really good game. And I would almost give an edge to Missouri. Almost. Iowa, they're at 23. I was close to bumping them out altogether. But I do think that they are one of the top 25 teams in the country with 2 losses. But they do a lot to just keep stressful, low scoring, beat your head against the wall games. They're 23. Washington ekes back in at 24 with 2 losses. Last week, I think the Huskies, going in and getting a win against Arizona, a big win. Khalil Tate just couldn't do anything. The first half, Washington just lived in the backfield. And they really exposed Khalil Tate for the rawness that he is at the quarterback position. So my opinion of him as the quarterback, just, again, it goes back to some of those poor decisions that Blackman makes. He was making some of the same decisions. He's just clearly more talented. He's a more gifted athlete. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's faster. So you have those intangibles. You're going to get more out of it. So Khalil Tate clearly was able to impose his will in some sense, but Washington was just on point. Their defense looked really good. I know they lost to Stanford. Stanford's, it's an in-conference, essentially North rival team. Those games are going to be close. Stanford's not a bad program. Their record doesn't reflect the quality of the program. It's just they keep everything close anyways. And they were only able to find 13 points in the game. So, is that regrettable? Yeah. But you saw them the week before, and they played SC. SC does, I I think the last few times SC has went up to Washington and won. And SC matches up well athletically. And they beat them by 14 points. BYU, they shut down BYU. Shut down Hawaii. Hawaii is a high-flying offense. Hawaii got shut down last night again, too. Or was it, who did they play? I was watching a game. Hawaii played Boise State this weekend.
Didn't he play Boise State?
Yeah, Boise State. Boise State just bombed on them. 59-37. And it wasn't that close. So Boise State's really good. They're a good team, and that's why I have them right there at the precipice of 15. If Boise State played Hornibrook as starting quarterback and beat FSU at the beginning of the year and it wasn't Blackman, I would put more weight on that victory. But it's just are they somewhat subject of their competition? Yeah, it's hard to overlook the fact that you're not playing the same quality in conference. I mean, Boise State had FSU in Tallahassee. It ended up being in Tallahassee. Was supposed to be in Jacksonville, but ended up being in Tallahassee. Marshall was really competitive for the first month, and then that fell apart. Portland State, they beat Air Force, who's been good. UNLV this year has been kind of sneaky impressive at times. They were really neck and neck with Northwestern there for a little bit, but then they turn around and get blown out by Wyoming. And then they beat Vanderbilt.
I didn't know how bad UNLV was as a football program.
They're not good.
They're one of the worst football programs.
They put in some sneaky
major college football.
But they put in some sneaky good games. That's what I'm saying. Is out of nowhere they put in these, 2 or 3 games where they figured out how to, not step on their own dick and put a ball in the end zone. Like, how did they beat Vandy? UNLV should not beat Vanderbilt. They shouldn't. They did. And it wasn't even like it was close. It was 34-10. This is what I'm saying. They got blown out by Arkansas State, which is a quality program. 30-14 by Northwestern. Quality program. Wyoming, quality program, but Wyoming took them to the dog shit. 53-17. Boise State, 38-13, and then they turn around and beat Vanderbilt at Vandy, 34-10. Like, really? And now they travel to Fresno. That should be I just looked down their schedule, and they other than SUU, who the hell's SUU? Southern Utah Thunderbirds. Okay, SUU. Other than SUU, they shouldn't have had a win this season. Just looking at their schedule. They should have one win. They have 2, and one was Vandy. Because I'm looking down, Vanderbilt is better. Fresno State's better. San Diego State's better. Colorado State's better. Hawaii's better. San Jose State's better. Nevada is definitely better. But watch them beat Nevada. A team that beat Purdue week 1. Beat San Jose State. They were against Oregon. No, that game wasn't even close before the game kicked off. That was a one-sided game before the game even kicked off. So, I'm just saying. All right. Enough love for them. I wouldn't put Temple in the top 25. James, can you make a case for Temple being in the top 25?
I think I can. I mean, they have a pretty good game coming up this week. What did they do? Oh yeah, they were the ones that kind of like stopped that in the early part of the season. They stopped that momentum that Maryland had. Maryland dropped all them points on Howard, then they dropped all them points on Syracuse, and folks were like, "Whoa, oh man, watch out for Maryland," right?
Yeah, I was one of them.
And then goes over to Temple, and they score just 17 points and lose. And ever since then, Maryland has been on the chill spin. So I think.
And by the way,
Temple is a very good team.
And by the way, I make a joke saying Missouri again because the coaches poll picked Temple over Missouri, which I don't agree with. I don't see an argument of Temple being in over Missouri. Missouri lost to Wyoming. I know I said it was small town directional state. Wyoming is not a slouch program. I mean,
no, it might as well be small town directional state when you lose to Wyoming, though, man.
I understand. That's what I'm saying. That's why I played it off that way. That's why I introduced that way. I mean, Wyoming again. They beat Missouri. Let's see. They really haven't had many other games this season that are of note. Like I pulled it up here thinking that they were competitive with something. No, out of conference they played Texas State. They beat them. Idaho, and they beat Idaho. They lost to Tulsa by 3. They lost to San Diego State by 4. They beat the brakes off UNLV. Like, Missouri should have won that game. But since that, Missouri beat West Virginia 38-7. Southeast Missouri, we're going to talk about that 50-0. South Carolina. So the team that just beat Georgia in Athens and was competitive with Alabama for the first half lost to Missouri, beat them 34-14. Troy 42-10. Ole Miss 37-27. They go to Vandy this week. To Vandy, where UNLV just won. I mean, I don't know what the point spread is on that game after Vandy just lost at home to UNLV. But it's probably ended up going to be, I mean, they only put up 10 points on UNLV. That could be a 52-6 game right there. Then they go to Kentucky, who's been competitive. Then they go to Athens. They get Florida at home, Tennessee at home, and end the season at Arkansas. That sounds hella interesting. But it's not like they've had, really a nothing burger schedule. I mean, Southeast Missouri, yes. Wyoming, that's an okay out of conference. West Virginia, clearly, that's a Big 12. I mean, when they scheduled that, they were, one of the top three teams, 4 teams in the Big 12, and Dana Holgerson was the coach, and they were competing every year, winning a bunch of games. And West Virginia has kind of turned some things around. They look a little bit better at times this season, but not the same. I mean, they're 3-3. It was close at times against Texas, and they beat North Carolina State, and that was out of conference too. So they took Missouri and North Carolina State out of conference, and who else? James Madison. And James Madison is not a slouch. They've won that conference, a few times over the last couple of years, James Madison.
Ooh, James Madison. Oh, I don't know if they had like a high-profile win or something like that.
No, I'm saying they've won their conference. Where is this?
What you were saying about?
90 seconds.
I was saying James Madison has won their conference. Anyways. The thing is, with teams like James Madison, their season ends later. So a lot of times you have guys like that struggle making it to the Senior Bowl
60 seconds.
And the Shrine Game because they're just ending their season. Because pretty sure they play a tournament style. I could be wrong there. Anyways, they're no slouch team. I can tell you that. I mean, James Madison's only loss this season literally was the opening weekend to West Virginia, and they lost by a touchdown. So, all right. Let's
10 seconds.
Let's go ahead and move on to this week's schedule. There's not a ton of games last week that I really want to get too deep into. Was there any games in week 7 that you wanted to revisit? I mean, I go over our. Hold on a second. Go over our picks last week. We could do that real quick. Just re-highlight our picks. We were. You don't want to?
I think I might know one.
Virginia, Miami was the first game. We both picked that wrong. South Carolina, Georgia. We both picked that wrong.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, Texas. We both got that right. Bama, Texas A&M. We got that right. Florida State, Clemson. I got that wrong. I shouldn't have got that wrong, but I did. We both picked Wisconsin over Michigan State. Cincinnati over Houston. We both picked that there. Arizona State and Washington State. Clearly, Arizona State is still at one loss. They won that one close. So, take them where you can get them, right? Iowa State. Pretty sure Iowa State won. Did they not? Yeah, they beat West Virginia. Yep. So we got that. SC Notre Dame. Like an idiot, I picked SC and I lost. You picked one of the rare occasions you picked Notre Dame. Penn State, Iowa. We both got that right. Florida, LSU. Washington, Arizona. We actually both got that wrong. And then the no one should pick game, which was Central Michigan and New Mexico. We both picked Central Michigan.
We both picked Central Michigan for that last game.
Yep. So you finished the week off 10-3, and I was 8-5. Where I went wrong is I picked SC and gambled, and I said I need an upset game of the week. So why not, with Hornibrook in starting, go with FSU? And then they didn't start Hornibrook. I think I'm going to unfollow Willie Taggart now. I'm going to have to unfollow him.
Because you wouldn't start your boy Hornibrook.
Yep. So, we didn't do too bad. I mean, in hindsight. So, now we got that out of the way. Let's go ahead and get into week 8. This week, probably the marquee matchup of the week. Florida at South Carolina. And the funny thing is, Auburn at Arkansas, that might be an interesting game. It shouldn't be, but it might be, because Arkansas has been sneaky competitive over the last few weeks. Miami should throttle Georgia Tech, but Miami's been up and down. Like, they lost to Virginia Tech, which I didn't know if they were going to win any more games the rest of the season. And then they turn around and they won last week over Virginia. So, I don't know. Iowa State heads to Lubbock to play Texas Tech. Texas Tech has looked good at times. Iowa State's made mistakes and lost. So that might be interesting. TCU, K-State. K-State, if they can slow the tempo of the game down, keep the ball away, don't make mistakes, they could beat TCU at home. I think Oregon State, Cal has the potential to be a high-scoring game, except I had this feeling that Cal has a kind of a sneaky good defense. So we'll see what happens there. Cal is a really interesting team on the whole. They held Oregon to 17. And that's not easy to do. They held Washington. They beat them 20-19. They held them to 19. You know? Ole Miss only scored 20. And then Arizona State scored 24. Cal also could only score 17 points, but they put up like 1 billion yards in the process. So it could end up being another one of those shootouts. Again, telling people, outside of last week, Oregon State has been an interesting team. I thought that they were going to beat Stanford. They got close. Lost by 3. Beat UCLA. And then Utah is just better. But we'll see what Cal can do. That should be an interesting game this weekend. I don't want to pick that game. Georgia is at home against Kentucky. Can Georgia bounce back against Kentucky? And their quarterback, my gosh. I thought Sawyer Smith would have beaten Florida, and that was close. But Len Bowden, that guy has went beast mode. He had 3 touchdowns to get Kentucky past Arkansas last week. All right, James, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. You were talking about the thing with Georgia and Kentucky being one of the games that are, that's on your slate.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just looking back over the games that might be interesting this week. Because I don't know, I just think we could pick the games beforehand and do prep on it and everything, but I don't think that's as entertaining. Like literally, just say this team, who you got. I think that makes it a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Like Baylor, for example. Baylor at Oklahoma State. That's hella interesting.
I got Baylor in that one.
You got Baylor. Game is on Fox. 4 o'clock in Oklahoma City.
It's in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, it's in Oklahoma City. You know what? I'm taking Oklahoma State. Why not? All right, let's see here.
Well, they are coming off an off week, but they did lose to Texas Tech in that last game.
In Lubbock.
So that'll be an interesting one there for Oklahoma State to see if they can pull it off, man.
All right.
They did have that home win against Kansas State a few weeks ago, so
Yep.
maybe they're a different team at home.
Arizona State, Utah.
Ooh, that's a good game. That's going to be a good game. That should be one of the better matchups of the week.
It's in Salt Lake City.
Man, and it's at Utah though. Dang. I don't think Arizona State's gonna pull this one off. I think Utah will be able to do it. They'll be able to get this one.
All right, Kentucky, Georgia.
Georgia, they'll bounce back off that crushing loss. So Georgia.
All right. Michigan at Penn State.
Picking Penn State. Michigan's offensive line is a weakness. Penn State will take advantage of that. And as long as Michigan has Shea Patterson as their starting quarterback, they're not going to go that far. So I'm picking Penn State.
Arizona at USC.
USC.
I'm going to go Arizona. I got to create some sort of difference, right? Let's see here. Oregon at Washington.
I'm picking Oregon. A more complete team.
Copycat. All right. Seems how you're right or die for them. Temple at SMU.
Oh man, that is. Oh, that's at SMU, man. I'm picking SMU.
Because it's in Dallas.
Yeah.
TCU at K-State.
Oh,
right?
Kansas State.
Man. Auburn at Arkansas.
Auburn.
West Virginia at Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's going to cover the spread. They're going to win this one big.
Keep in mind, West Virginia kept it really close against Texas. That really shouldn't change anything.
OU in the spread.
Yeah, that really shouldn't change anything.
OU
Okay, so there was a game last year that Ohio State came close to losing, and that was Northwestern. It's at Northwestern on Friday. On Freaky Friday. Against this awkward, Northwestern team. That, Ohio State lost to Purdue last year. I'm not going to come with Purdue this year. And that kind of the other side of that coin is Northwestern. So, Ohio State at Northwestern.
Who's Northwestern playing here? It's
Ohio State.
Ohio State. And the points.
And the points. All right. 2 more. Pitt at Syracuse.
Pittsburgh.
All right. The last real bet of the week. UCLA at Stanford.
UCLA.
Interesting. What makes you take UCLA?
I just don't think that Stanford would be able to pull it out in this instance. What is it? Like, they kind of seem inconsistent, Stanford does. I just think that, UCLA will, find a way to get it. Even though, had, found out that, UCLA's had, a couple of players, and it's at least one player entered the transfer portal, but, they've been, scoring a good amount of points in some games, but I'm just not sold on Stanford. Never have been.
All right. Now for the nobody should bet this game or pick this game. I can't think of any other way to fit game into the conversation title game of the week is South Alabama at Troy.
Troy.
By the way, if you want to go to that game, you're not a long drive. They still have tickets available as low as $14. $14. So you got Troy, huh?
Yeah.
All right. And that's that. So, set the board off to the side. Got our picks in. It's on tape. Can't walk that back. Jalen Ramsey, the ownership said that they would not trade him. They're going to hold on to him. He's not going anywhere. Well, that changed because recent reports have Jalen Ramsey heading to the Rams. And the Rams are sending Marcus Peters packing in a trade. Well, I got to pull that back up here.
Baltimore?
To Baltimore, yes. Thank you. So how do you feel about this trade? You think Ramsey's a good fit for the Rams?
I don't know if he's a good fit for the Rams because I don't really know if the defense is the biggest concern for that team. I have it as, you have Jared Goff and, you have Todd Gurley as their premier players on offense. Two guys that have those, big contracts, and they haven't been doing much of anything this season. And that, now you have them basically, teetering around third in the NFC West, and the San Francisco 49ers are ahead of them, and Seattle Seahawks are ahead of them by at least 2 games. So they gotta get something going. We know it's 6 games in, and we ain't really halfway through the season yet, and adding Jalen Ramsey may spark them a little bit on defense, but unless if they're trying to win games like 21-17 or 17-10 or something like that, they got some work to do before they'll be able to catch up with San Francisco and Seattle. San Francisco is probably one of the better defenses in the league, and Seattle has Russell Wilson, who's probably been one of the best players in the NFL so far this year.
So, just to kind of figure out this, I don't feel like this was a good move, because what they're doing is the Rams are sending the first round pick for 2020 and 2021, as well as a fourth round pick in 2021.
Yep.
The Jags are now have 18 draft picks in the next 2 years, including 4 in the first round. Some teams have done good by finding guys instead of having draft picks. And I think, some teams can do that. If you have a good front office and your team can show up on the field and play, having guys instead of draft picks works. But sometimes when you get this crew of it doesn't work as harmonious as it should. So I know a lot of people point to Todd Gurley and say, he's part of their slowdown, and I don't think that's the case. And then they point to Jared Goff. He's not as good as he was last year. He's part of the slowdown. Again, that's not the case. The offense has been gashed, or the defense has been gashed a few times. Maybe, really, that's not the case. The defense is good. They have a good defense. They just need to execute better. The offense, they have a good quarterback. They have good guys in the backfield there. They're good on the skill positions as well. They have their skill positions on the outside. Where the Rams struggle is where they made sacrifices. And this is the important thing. And you make sacrifices, you are picking definitively one thing or person over another. They said, we're going to pay Goff, we're going to pay Gurley, we're going to, re-up these contracts, we're going to pay them like we want to keep them forever. We're putting the ring on it. But that process, their top two offensive linemen who made the magic happen, they felt were expandable, and they let them go. And we clearly can see this year the struggles in the run game and in the passing game. And a lot of it comes down to the offensive line play. The fact that they let those guys go makes a huge difference. I mean, sit back here. Look at what the Texans got for Laramie Tunsil. Sure, they gave up a guy, right? Yeah. But Laramie Tunsil is making Deshaun Watson a more protected passer and a better runner.
Mm-hmm.
And he is in the MVP conversation. So when you trade draft picks for guys, or guys that people see a lot of upside in, or, if football guys know the difference, and they are clearly the winners of that trade right there. So, where the Rams are pushing, they trade out Marcus Peters, one of the top DVs in the league, to get Jalen Ramsey, one of the top DBs in the league. They're not really doing so much upgrading. Ramsey has a contract coming up here. He's going to get paid by somebody. And the Rams gave up a lot. If they don't end up with him, that could be devastating. 2 first-round picks and a 4th for one guy. It looks like those are going to be in the 20s. But if you look at the league and guys that have made a difference, just in the, if you go, 20 through, even go down all the way to 40, 20 through 40, those 20 picks. So the top of the second round, which are essentially guys that are first round guys. You just don't have enough room in the first round, So they're saying that they think he's as good as 2 first-round picks and a 4th. I don't see that. Yeah, I'm not hating on Jalen Ramsey. That is just a lot to give up. For a corner. I don't know how you feel, James. For a corner. You there?
That's not a good look, man.
Let's hope Jags can do something with the picks. Getting picks.
We'll see about that. We'll see how the GM works that out. Because they'll be able to. That's what 1 first-round pick next year, 1 first-round pick the year after that, and the 4th-round pick the year after that. So they got a little bit of access to work with.
And then on the other end, like I said, they trade away Marcus Peters to the Ravens. What does this do for the Ravens?
Bolsters their defense. And kind of like makes them have the identity that they're, trying to establish is that, they're, trying to have like a running team and a good defense, which, pretty much was, like they, did beforehand when they had Super Bowl teams. So, that's what I'm getting off of that.
Because they've had the Ravens. That's probably one of the biggest issues they've faced this year is they're in the secondary with injuries. And so they traded Marcus Peters to Baltimore for linebacker Kenny Young and then an undisclosed 2020 draft pick. It's just peculiar that again, I understand that one of the issues, the Rams, again, I know Talib is on injured reserve with a rib injury, but he can return. And Ramsey clearly offers some sort of help now. And they trade Marcus Peters for a linebacker, though. A linebacker. Why? It's adding more to the defense. Not like, let me get a tackle. Let me get a guard. Or let me get, a guy that can play tackle and center. No. A linebacker. I don't feel like, although the Rams have injuries and they've had some issues this season. I mean, they lost to the Bucs. Jameis Winston played the game of his life in that game. Literally, it was the best game of his entire career. It's the best game, I'm safe to say, it's the best game Jameis Winston will ever play. Not on a video game set. And the Bucs are going to continue to play Jameis Winston the rest of the season.
Man.
Because they don't have an option.
They don't have anybody else.
They don't have any other options.
For Tampa Bay.
I mean, he's had... So, since him and Marcus Mariota came into the league, he's had 4 games that were terrible. That were 5 interception games? 4. 4 games that are 4+ interceptions. 4 of them. And since he's come into the league, there's only been the next most is 2 players having terrible games like that. 2. So and that's the thing, is like
they had them stats where what is it, like, since he came into the league, he's had like the most turnovers, most fumbles, something like that. They're the league leader in interceptions. Like, you're gonna have to either change the way that you play the game, or you're pretty much done. I mean, I know you have weapons around you and that type of thing, and that kind of like has him, having those games where he could throw for 300+ yards or whatever it is. But what good is that if you keep turning the ball over? You're not getting points on the board because you're turning the ball over. That's why, like, what it was, the first year, the second year, right? When he was in the league, they would have been doing okay if they would have, relied a little bit more, or had the offense geared a little bit more towards Doug Martin that time. But they wanted Jameis to be Jameis, and they ended up having a losing record there. So, I mean, there's only so much that you can do with Jameis Winston.
Sometimes it just takes too long to figure that out.
Well, thing about it is like now they're pretty much in a bad spot because this is like his contract year. And if he, is basically,
this is why they
average
sat
or
on it.
below average,
And I said
what are they gonna do?
And I said they were gonna sit on it. I said they were gonna sit on it, and there's no rush. everybody, I mean, some of the greatest minds in football, geniuses, whisperers, and whatever else you want to refer to them as, have come in and was like, I can change Jameis. I can develop him. I can make him what he needs to be. And everybody, and well, he's just proven everybody otherwise. Yeah, he got the game of his life out of him, but it took everything out of him. I don't know. It's just, and again, this is what I end up talking about every single year. And Marcus Mariota is no different. By the way, he was replaced by Ryan Tannehill. So, yeah. I didn't think Mariota necessarily was going to be the guy that got replaced first, but he is. But, Jameis just struggles with the decision making. He tries to do too much. Wants to force stuff to, because he thinks he's trying to push to win the game, but what he's not doing something that's pushing to win the game. It's showing he's making bad decisions and in the wrong time. And he hasn't done anything to work on the touch. And this is why, that's the thing, is without touch, if you can't put touch on the ball just looks errant and overthrown. You look wildly inaccurate. But that's the problem. It's not necessarily that you can't throw a ball. It's that you don't have touch. That's the problem. There's a lot of guys out there. If you're a quarterback and you want to be a quarterback, your accuracy and your touch are going to be some of the things that you work on the most. Because if you're accurate with your passes and you can have touch, so not everything's an arrow, and you put touch on the ball, you're putting the ball in a place where nobody can go get it but your guy. So, that's just it. If you can't do that, there's going to be, no matter how strong of an arm you have, or you're going to have times like this that you're just not going to be able to get the ball where it needs to go, because you can't do that. So, all right. So, but that's actually, that's going to wrap it up for this week on the show. The Nationals won and completed the sweep of the St. Louis Cardinals. So, the Nationals, the wild card team, is going to the World Series. Now they just got to sit and wait and see who they're going to play. Let's hope it's not, doesn't end up like the Rockies, when they sit there and get cold and rusty, and so. All right, but that's going to do it this week for the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. Thank you all for listening in. wherever you guys decide to listen from. If it's Spreaker.com, the Spreaker app, BlogTalkRadio, SoundCloud, or Facebook Live. We appreciate you each and every week. I'm out.
Thank you for using Blog Talk